In this lab activity, we will be adding a second page to our Ragus photography page. By the time you're done with this series of videos, you will have a home page and a linked services page to where when you click on the services link, it takes you to the services page. And if you want to go back to the home page, it's just a matter of clicking on home. To help us, I have provided a PSD of my services mockup page. Also, I have provided a zip file that contains two HTML files that you will copy and paste code from. There's also a JPEG and PSD version of this mockup of the services page. And the part that you will be using is inside the Lab 4B folder. In there, you will find a CSS folder and an images folder containing various assets that we will be using for this website. In the CSS folder, there's a style.css file, and in the images folder will be the various images that will be used in the website. Now, I know in a previous lab, you created the index.html and style.css for this page. However, just to make sure that we're all working from the same file, no mistakes, no deviations, I want you to please use the files that I have provided instead of using your own. Now, before we get started, one of the things I want you to get from what we're going to do in this lab is the idea of how you can use what you've already created when you did your homepage, because theoretically at this point, by the time you're working on this lab activity, you should already have an HTML and CSS version of your homepage for your website project. So you've already done all the work in creating the HTML and the CSS. And if your website is consistent, then you will have something that's kind of like mine. If you look at my homepage, it's similar to my services page. They have the same look and feel, different content as far as in the main section, but it's using the same theme. It's got the same colors, same fonts, and so on. Also, it's using the same header and the same footer, so I can use a lot of the same code. With that in mind, then, what we can do to get started is to just copy index.html. I will right-click on it and copy, and then I'll paste in the same page. And for this copy, I will rename it to services.html. Now, the reason I chose that particular file name for our second page is if you look at index.html, I have made it to where services is a hyperlink that is looking for services.html in the same folder as index.html. So that's how I set this up. So as you're thinking about adding more pages for your website project, this is how you should do it. You should create or use relative links and then put your various HTML files in the same level, in the same folder. Okay, so if you're ready, open services.html, and we will make additional edits to that before we mess with the main content. For every HTML page, you need to have a unique title. So that's the first thing we'll change. We'll call this services. We'll add a vertical bar. You can go ahead and leave the company name along with the location. And just so I can identify your file, please change last name to your actual last name. You want to use a unique page title for every HTML page because that's important for search engine optimization. If all your pages have the same title, then there's no way for Google or whatever search engine is out there, there's no way for them to distinguish each page. And when you do a Google search, this is what you see in the search results, the title. All right, so now that we're done with that, we will leave the header section alone because it's pretty much the same design. Main thing though is it doesn't have the baby image, so we'll take that part out. Take this img sleepingbaby.jpg image, take that line out. You will leave the footer alone because that's the same. This is our home page. Here's the services mockup. Same design for the footer. What's different is what's in the main content. It doesn't have the tagline, so I could take that out. And then looking at how I have the main content set up, there's a sidebar, and then there's the main content. So I can think of it as being two columns. One column for the sidebar, and then the second column for the main content. Looking at our home page, we created a portion within main that's two columns. This one is one column, this is the other column. And we implemented that by having a div with the class wrapper applied to it. And then within that wrapper would be the two columns. This is that column with the paragraph information. And then the second column is the one with the twins image. So we'll do the same thing for our mockup since it has two columns. Now this is the sidebar. And if you recall from a previous lesson, there is a semantic markup tag for that. Instead of using a generic div, we can use aside. Here's my opening aside tag, and this is my closing aside tag. I will change that to that. I won't be using the bio class, but I do want to change the column selection because my sidebar is two columns wide. So this should be col-2, and then this div containing the main content for services, that should be 10 columns. And I'll take out the twins class since I won't be using that. So that takes care of the structure. Now we can delete the content inside the aside container, and then also delete the content inside that other div. All right, so if you need to, go ahead and pause the video and take a look at what we have left in our services.html file. This is what you should have in the body. To recap, in the header section, we just took out the sleeping baby image, and then in the main section, we took content out and changed a couple of things around and added or took out a couple of classes and changed classes. So you should just compare this with yours. And then we left the footer alone because it's the same. In the next video, we will start adding content to the main section so that we can begin creating this subpage.